Hello, and welcome to the Extra Literary Affairs podcast, where we discuss and analyze short stories and sometimes books of all genres. So if you're lit curious, then you are right where you belong. I'm Joey Kelly.
And I'm Jennifer Smith.
Yeah. Today, Jennifer and I are celebrating a milestone, our 100th episode. Our podcast has evolved and grown since our humble beginnings, so we wanted to dedicate time to looking back and sharing our hopes for the future. A retrospective. I have been trying to think of that word all week. It's on the tip of my tongue. I know there is a word for this. And I was like, a recollection. I'm like, yeah, it is a recollection, but it's a retrospective. That's what it is. Okay. And I was reading something this morning and it said it. And I was like, damn, that's it. That's
my word.
Okay. So it's going to be a bit of a Q&A for us today to recollect and go down memory lanes. Jennifer, did you ever think we would make it to 100 episodes? Because this is our literal 100th episode that will be posted.
I really didn't know exactly what to expect, Joey. And before you joined our previous incarnation of our podcast, the previous partner and I, we had done 5 episodes. And we knew right away that we needed Joey Kelly in our life. In my mind, we started the clock over when you joined the team. And since that point, it's always been these very small milestones. I'm like, well, if we post 1 episode for a year, I will think like we totally exceeded my expectations for what we could accomplish together. And so that would have been 52 episodes. But as I was looking through our list today, we often were posting 2 times a week. So we have covered a lot of ground in that short period of time. And so Joey, when you joined the podcast on that very first recording, what was your expectation for how long you thought we would continue to do this?
Well, that first one I was not involved yet. I was just a stand-in for the last one because he was not available. So you're like, hey, do you want to do it? And I was like, oh, this is so sweet. I am so nervous because what if I don't have anything nice to say? Or what if I don't have anything important to say? Spoiler, I did. And then I was like, I have lots more I should say. And I'm going to make 100 episodes. I didn't really think about it. I don't remember what episode I officially joined.
I do.
Now, oh, do you? What is it?
Well, I'm just going to say you officially joined the day you started because I knew you were a shoo-in. And if we could talk you into staying, we were going to do that. So for me, that felt you were with us from that moment. And that is the moment that I believe in my heart of hearts, Extra Literary Affairs as it exists today, the seed was planted.
What was the story?
We're Not So Different, You and I, by Simon Rich.
Yeah, that's it. So yeah, I didn't really think about it. Even when I officially joined whatever episode that was, it was shortly after that. I don't remember exactly. I didn't really think about how long this would last because I just went into it like, I don't know what's going to happen here. I don't really know these people that well, but we're going to see. As long as we're all having fun, then we're going to continue to do it. So I didn't really have any expectations. I just thought, well, this is fun. This seems like a cool thing that I'm interested in doing. And we all love to talk about literature. So it was nice to have a space to do that. I kind of just went in and like, I don't really care if anyone listens to it. I hope people listen to it and appreciate it. But if they don't, we have 100 hours worth of us talking recorded and on the internet. So I don't know what we're going to do with that, but we're going to add even more hours.
Joey, I love that you said that because the idea of we'll just keep doing this as long as it's fun. We're not fixated on how many people are listening or how people are interacting with us. But I think for me, that also has evolved a teeny tiny bit because in January of 2025, we made the bold move of saying we're going to have a YouTube channel, and we posted some of our audio only podcasts. Oh, let's just see. And that, as my father would say, went over like a lead balloon. We threw it out there. I don't think that's where people were finding us. They were still primarily getting us through the podcast services. Our April wrap up that we posted in May was the first time that we said we are definitely going to be on video. Let's see what this is like. And that, I think, has been the biggest change that has happened in this podcast since our inception. It has been a wild ride for me, Joey. I don't know how you feel about it, but I didn't know exactly what to expect. I think we have a broader reach than we've had previously, and that's always really rewarding. I think the opportunity in the future for listeners to reach out to us, to interact, to ask questions, to dispute what we had to say, that just gives us a much clearer channel for people to be able to interact.
it did feel like a big deal for me as well to start doing video instead of just audio, because you're pretty vulnerable if you have to put yourself on video. I think it's very ubiquitous now, especially with social media platforms like TikTok, where everyone picks up their phone and just says literally anything that comes to their mind, whether it's good or bad. It's easier for some people, but for me, I was like, no, I don't really want to do that. I want to just stay as audio. But then we've had many discussions about, well, if we want to broaden our reach and interact with people who may not be podcast listeners and who would be more interested in watching us as we're speaking and interacting with one another, that we should do it. And then we just kept doing it. And all of our audio podcasts are also on YouTube. Every single one is on there. So if anyone is not on any of those podcast platforms, they can listen to us on YouTube. You'll just watch our logo. If you're watching it, it'll just be our voices. You can hear and see once we start a video how we evolved. You can see all of the different mics that I eventually get and then land on this one. Our lighting, backgrounds, and stuff like that. I think it's fun to watch, especially the first one, even though it was this year, and see how much we've already changed things as we keep going.
Yeah, Joey, it's interesting to look back, but in some ways it's also a little frightening. And one of the things that this reminds me of is because you and I met on a Zoom book club, that it's like, oh, right, it's just like we're on Zoom. Yeah, but the whole world can just watch us. That's a little different. And so I'm glad that we were willing to be vulnerable with our person, our actual image. I think people who have listened to our podcast realize that we're very vulnerable with our personal experience, with our preferences, with what we appreciate about literature. I don't think that has changed at all, but the literal exposure of our person to the world just felt very vulnerable. Just as a side note, I was listening to Elizabeth Gilbert, who is a very famous author. She has just released a book that a lot of people are not enjoying, and some people are really enjoying, but for her, her message was, the world needs your vulnerability. The world needs you to show up authentically. And there are going to be people who hate that about you. They hate that you even exist. And the best thing you can do for the world, for yourself, for your community, is to show up and be authentic. And I think that really was the message I needed to hear. If a best-selling author can say those words, we're going to say those words. We're going to lead with our vulnerability. As you had mentioned to me at one time, Joey, that we're doing this for ourselves initially. And if it does allow other people to have deeper conversations about literature or makes them curious to look into other types of literature, then that's a win for me and you and us.
Our goals have changed or evolved since we've been doing this. I don't think mine have. I have always just wanted to try and encourage other people to read, and read short stories in particular, which we will discuss right after this, because that's our whole thing, is short stories. I just really want to encourage people to read and interact with literature, because as a lot of people have realized, and there's a lot of discourse online, that the literacy rates are continuing to decline, at least in the United States, as our Department of Education is gutted. So it's really important to me, as someone who loves literature, to try and give free education to an extent. I mean, I can't teach everything on here, but parts of your literary education, if you're in an English class or something like that, close reading and critical analysis, and how to identify these literary terms and how are they being used in the actual work that you're reading. That's why we spend time defining literary terms that are inside whatever text that we're reading at the time. I don't think we've ever defined metaphor, but usually people know what that one is. Like a MacGuffin I talked about the other day. I explained what that looks like in that text that we were reading, which was The Monkey's Paw by W.W. Jacobs. The Monkey's Paw was the MacGuffin. Watch that episode if you want to know about it. And I related it to something else that more people may have read, which was The Lord of the Rings or watched. So I think that's always my goal, and I'm sticking with it. That's what I want to do, is trying to encourage and teach if I can. What about you, Jennifer?
I am going to pivot, as I often do, Joey, to another literary term. And it's a literary term that was coined here in our podcast, which is lit curious. We have talked a lot about being lit curious. What does that actually mean? For me, being lit curious means being open to new experience, to do all the things that you had just said. You're going to dive deeper, that you're going to Push yourself out of a comfort zone. If you only read romances, maybe it's time to check out some horror or some poetry or dip your toes into Shakespeare. My goal has always been, can you share your excitement about literature with other people in a convincing way that makes them go, maybe I'll check that out for myself? And the reason that we pick short stories is because we want people to not have to make a 300-page commitment to read the material. Short stories pack most of the punch of a novel, well-written short stories do, in a very short fraction of the time. So if you are curious about literature, you're not quite sure where you'd like to start, pick an episode, read the story we will be discussing, and then jump into the conversation. That's what I would really like people to do and interact with us. And Joey, when you coined the term Lit Curious, what were you thinking that was going to be?
I did coin that term. I don't even remember how I came up with it. Extra literary affairs. I came up with that name. I was just washing dishes and I started giggling and I was like, oh my God, this is so funny. So a lot of things I'm motivated by making myself laugh. So that's where I come up with stupid stuff. But I think to be lit curious is to be interested in all genres of literature and not really be too committed to loving just one, whether it's high fantasy or sci-fi or literary fiction, romance, as you said, something like that. And I think that what we're trying to do with this channel/podcast is to try and show that there is a spectrum of literature. Just because you would think something is genre fiction, which is usually not the nicest thing to say about someone's work, I don't think it has to be a naughty word. It's a perfectly good descriptor. It gives us a good idea of what we can sort of expect on maybe a prose level. Is this going to be a challenging text? It could still be challenging and be genre fiction, but I think on a prose level, that's really where I see the difference. But anyway, if you want to know the difference, we talk about that too. There is an old school extra literary fair episode where I go through and give 2 examples. I use 2 stories that we read. One being The Monkey's Paw, and the other one is A Road Virus Heads North by Stephen King. There are just so many themes and topics that are coming up in these works that are worthy of scholarship and discourse and could be passed by because they are considered genre fiction. And then on the opposite end of the spectrum, where we have these really sort of highbrow literary pieces like Clarice Lispector's The Egg and the Chicken. Okay, that's going to be a hard one if someone wants to read it. I encourage everyone to read it. We try to show that these are not out of your wheelhouse. These can be things that you can read. Maybe they're not super easy to read quickly. It's not a straightforward read. It takes more time. It takes a little bit more effort and research to understand certain things, but they're not impossible to read. We don't want anyone to feel intimidated by any of the things that we're talking about. We only want to encourage you to read it.
We're trying to make literature accessible to everyone. That was one of our main drivers of our conversations initially, and I think that is really still apparent. As you said, we often will use a literary term that you and I, that's how we talk to each other. We are taking the time to actually explain it in a little bit more depth and give examples, so it will not be intimidating or jargon. Why do they keep using these strange words? Once you start peeling back the layers of stories, you'll start seeing some of these repeated tropes over and over again. And your literary antenna will be like, wait, I think I know what the author's doing here. For me, that feels really exciting. You're solving a puzzle. You are co-creating with the author by looking at what they've said, putting it as a mirror against your own experience, asking, why do you think the author wrote this? Is this still relevant? Earlier today, Joey, I was looking at the list of the 99 episodes prior to today that we have recorded. And we have covered from Shakespeare to Sally Rooney to Clarice Lispector to James Joyce to Ernest Hemingway to Faulkner to P. Djeli Clark. We have gone everywhere, all time frames, all cultures, so many translations, different viewpoints, different gender representations, different sexual orientations. We seem to really pick works that are beautifully written. We are not getting fixated on where they came from or what embedded message might be there from the person who wrote it. I'm so proud of that. And I think I've taken that a little bit for granted because we are such wide readers. You know, I love my spreadsheet, Joey. So I got my spreadsheet out and I'm categorizing all of these. And we've done flash fiction, we've done poetry, we've done Shakespeare, we've done a novel, we've done a ton of short stories. We've gone through the New Yorker short stories, and it's a lot. We have
Yeah.
yet to read a play. That is a 2026 goal. I would love to read and discuss a play with you. And yeah, good for us. And I know that sounds a little
Good
congratulatory,
for
but it's like, good for us. Let me rephrase that. I was just very moved looking at that list, at the power of the conversations that we've had with each other. As you said in the opening, we didn't know each other. We saw each other a few times on a book club. I didn't really know much about you. We've spent a lot of time on recordings, a lot of times talking about literature. I know you in a very specific way, and that feels very meaningful to me. So, Joy, I just wanted to say thank you for being open to that and being open to letting the world watch that relationship unfold. I think that's also pretty cool.
Yeah, and we talk a lot outside of this as well. We talk basically every day. There's always a conversation going on. But obviously, we read a lot of short stories, as you mentioned. We've read quite a few novellas now. We've read a novel. We're going to be reading a novel, Catabasis by R.F. Kuang, which just came out at the end of the summer and has taken the internet by storm. So you're going to hear our opinions on it. Hopefully they're good, because I'm not sure yet. I'm halfway through. I don't know. I have my thoughts. But anyway, why did we choose short stories? You dipped into that a little bit, saying it's not a huge time commitment. They can deliver everything that a full-length novel can give you in 8 to 10 pages. Sometimes they're like, don't look now, maybe like around 50 pages or so, depending on what edition you're reading. Typically not long. Usually you're going to spend an hour, if that. It depends on your reading speed, I guess. That's all the time that you really need to sit and read something. We read Give It Up by Franz Kafka, which is the shortest piece of fiction that we've ever read. Outside of a poem, there's only paragraphs, like 5 sentences. And it's an excellent story. Why do you think people may overlook short stories?
So, Joey, before I answer that question, and anybody who's listening to our podcast knows, I never answer the actual question. I just go off on a tangent. So this is a tangent, Joey, but it's relevant to what you just said about Kafka. The reason I want to encourage people to read short stories is that if you're not quite sure you want to commit to an entire novel, Kafka isn't for everyone. Okay, let's just be straightforward. He doesn't always hit the notes for everyone on their first read. I wouldn't want to commit to reading one of his longer works without maybe getting a little sampler plate. Let me just see if I can ease into someone's writing style. So when we talk about Margaret Atwood, or we talk about Hemingway, or we talk about Faulkner, there are shorter stories of these heavyweight names in literature that people probably know or have heard about or think that they may not be for them. You can pretty quickly read a short story by one of these authors. You're almost guaranteed, I know, money back guarantee. If you don't like this advice, you can just get all your money back. If you read it, it will give you a very good idea of if you may want to commit to reading something more. So I know we're all super pressed for time. The world is moving so incredibly quickly, but the value of reading these older short stories for me, the emotions, the motivations, the societal pressures, a lot of the things that we're facing in this exact moment, they were talking about in 1850, which was not yesterday, okay? So this enduring human connection, maybe the past does have something relevant that can help me navigate how I want to show up in the world by watching these other characters either do it great or be horrible. We have read some horrible, it's not that they were written horribly, but their motivations and their actions were just like, no, sir. No, thank you.
Yeah, I will ask around to people, especially if I meet new people. I'm like, do you read short stories? Because I'm always curious, like, why this is not like a huge thing. I watch YouTube a lot too, so even the booktube content creators I watch, they read short stories, but they don't read a lot of them, I'll say. They read them, sporadically. So I'm always curious, like, well, why would someone overlook a short story? I've gotten lots of different answers. Some people have said, I just feel like it's too short. I just start to get to know the characters or what's going on with the plot, and then it's over. Then what? Now I have nothing else to read with these people. Valid, okay. Or some people are like, well, I just don't understand short stories. They're too short. Too much is happening sometimes. They're too dense in content or topic or theme. Okay, I see that too. Some people just didn't really even know they existed. They didn't know that stories could be that short. So I was like, okay, well, yeah, there's a whole world of short stories out here, and they're perfect for not a lot of time, but you still want to read something. So I agree that it's a very low time commitment. You don't have to dedicate hours and hours and hours. If you're reading like a thick high fantasy novel like Catabasis, the audiobook is 18 hours long if you listen to it at normal speed. So that's a big time commitment. That's almost half of a work week there. Whereas, you could spend 20 minutes or so reading a short story and getting a lot of those same emotions evoked through it. I think that's why we stay on short stories, because they're great, number one. And there are plenty of short stories that are like mid or crap, for sure. Okay, same with novels. Doesn't matter how long it is, it could still be mid or shit. To toot our own horn, we're picking stories that are by really talented authors we have read before, or at least one of us has read them before, so that we're aware of their style and stuff like that. You have to be a really talented author to get everything into a short story, not feel like it's rushed or too overfilled with details and exposition, and to evoke emotion. Like, we have been reading horror, so you have to feel horrified. I think one of the best examples that sticks out to me is The Frolic by Thomas Ligotti. That is a frightening story, and it's very short. It's like 14 pages, if I remember correctly, in my edition that I have. Or our number one example of the one that made us both cry was The Paper Menagerie by Ken Liu. That's a tearjerker. These are really short, but they're still evoking all of this emotion in us and in other people, not just us. So I think that's why we love short stories so much, is because they just can be so amazing, and it's constantly a surprise when you're like, wow, this author spent 10 pages and created this entire world. I fully believed it, and I absolutely loved my experience.
Yeah, Joey, it's the author's flexing, right? You and I, we are not professional writers in an artistic sense. We are probably not going to sit down and kick out a 10-page story that's going to make people go like, my life has changed as a result of these things. I just don't think we have those skills quite yet. And it's so great to see authors really be able to have such clear messaging, beautiful language, excellent composition. Some of them are cliffhangers, some of them are just really well plotted. You asked the question earlier, which I deferred, which I often do, and I'd love to come back to. Why do we think people don't read short stories? And for me, even in my own life, prior to spending time with you, Joey, I was in a book club that specifically had a person who picked only short stories, because if you're meeting somebody every 2 weeks or even sometimes once a month, you may not have time to read an entire novel and participate in a conversation. For me, sometimes you find short stories in an anthology. Sometimes you find them in a place like The New Yorker. You have turned me on to several of these literary magazines that are online that are publishing generally more contemporary, for me, lesser known writers that have been excellent, absolutely wonderful. I'm thinking of Stephen Graham Jones' Night Cyclist, which I encountered him as a writer the very first time on a free publication online. So when you ask the very direct question, why do you think people shy away from short stories? In some part of me, I think, well, they don't even know where to look, because I didn't know where to look, Joey, and I would love to give credit where credit is due. You have done a tremendous job of reading around and finding out what stories may or may not be acceptable for us, or have the right tone or topic. I think there's only been one story that I am aware of that we both said, no, this is not a story that we would like to discuss because of some of the problematic themes and language, and we skipped it. I will say that a lot of these authors are new to me because you, Joey, have taken the time to read around, find new authors, read something and be like, that was good. I liked that. Let's discuss it. I'm hoping that our conversations will encourage other people to be like, oh, I didn't even know that was a short story. Often on our website, we will have a link to a free PDF or a source for these stories. We don't want people to have to make a huge financial commitment. And if they are readily available, we will let you know, because why not? The more the merrier.
Yeah, a lot of the times these are old works, so they're just in the public domain sometimes, or they're just so easily accessible that there's PDFs. Do you have a story or a conversation or an episode that you specifically remember as like the one that you're like, this is our best one yet?
We had so much fun recording the podcast for We're Not So Different, You and I. And for me, that was also an emblem of you and I. We come from different generations. We come from different parts of the country. We have very different styles. We're just very different. But in some ways, we're extremely similar. We love doing this thing. So this superhero story really tripped my trigger. It was like, I don't know how this is going to go, and it was perfect. So that was a story that I felt was very memorable because it was the first time. I know I cried during the episode of The Paper Menagerie by Ken Liu. I'm not sure if I made you cry or not.
No, I definitely was like choking
Yeah,
up because I was like, I know it's gonna happen.
it was just so powerful. And I think back to the guests that we've had. So Chris came on and we talked about The Witch. We had Ben and Sandy join us. I had my friend Ian come and talk about Irish literature and James Joyce. Those conversations stick out because it's a nice reminder that literature is for everyone. We happen to be blessed with people in our life who want to talk about literature. And I remember, Joey, I think maybe the only time I had actual envy of something that you did that I wasn't a part of was when you had your sister and brother-in-law and you guys did an episode. Chris and I were listening to it and I was like, man, that is really good. We've got to up our ante because we need to have something that's as good as Joey and his family. Our family needs to show up and put some content out there. And so that was just a really fun moment for me of like, can we get them back? Jenna, where are you? We would love for you to come back.
Jenna and Brian. Yeah, that's a good story that we talked about, the War of the Clowns. Do you like those episodes when we have people on? I think those are always memorable and fun because we get to have this fresh perspective on literature. Not that we have like, you know, crusty old perspectives on literature or something, but it's nice to sometimes have somebody else on that can be like, oh, like I didn't notice this thing. Maybe it was something that we both overlooked for some reason, or it's just something we wouldn't even have thought about. As we have talked about, you know, offline, we sort of talk to each other in shorthand a little bit because we don't have to explain literary things to each other, so we don't have to stop to be like, what do you mean? Because we already know what each other means. We're just like, yeah, no, I love what you said, and I know exactly what you're saying, and now I'm going to build on it. It forces us to stop and give a little bit more of an explanation. I'm not saying we're out here doing the craziest, like, oh my god, you've never heard this perspective before on literature. I'm sure there are some things that are completely original to us that we have said. I mean, the odds are pretty good after 100 episodes. I do like that experience when we have to stop to explain a little bit more and provide a little bit more context, because I think that's important. And also we already know each other's like motivations for interpretations. We also don't have to provide that context. But anyway, that was not what we're talking about. The episodes that I really like, there's quite a few. I obviously like that very first episode because it was just like a fun little adventure. I never thought that I would ever do something like this, so I'm very excited that I did it. And then it turned into this, obviously, so that was awesome. There's 2 episodes that we talked about Audre Lorde. We did the transformation of silence into language and action, and then I did one on my own for the use of the erotic as power. I haven't really brought her up in a long time, but Audre Lorde is one of my all-time favorite authors. She's such an inspiration to me. I've read lots of her work, and I continue to read a lot of her work. I think that her work is so important to me as a person that I really love exploring those things, and because she's maybe not as well known anymore. I mean, if you're a literary person and you're into feminism and that kind of thing, you have to have like a specific perspective and taste in reading that you would seek someone out like Audre Lorde, which I think is a shame because I think we all have so much we could learn from her. So I really love those episodes because even though they're nonfiction, her messaging is so powerful and important. I think it's mirrors what you were saying.
So, Joey, I just want to say something about Audre Lorde and what I learned as a result of being on this podcast with you. So, this weekend, I was in a public area and I saw a woman holding a sign that said, "Your silence will not protect you," and credit it to Audre Lorde. I'm like, I know that. And you know why I know that? Because Joey brought this amazing author into my life. And me being me, what did I do? I charged right up to that woman and said, hey, I love your sign. She's like, yep, I carry it many places. This is my message. And gave her a card to listen to our podcast, because why wouldn't she? We are her people. If she's reading Audre Lorde, she may find something of interest in our other content. So, Joy, I just want to say thank you for expanding my horizons on authors that are important and have infiltrated the way that we look at literature, the way we talk to each other, the way we talk to others and interact. I think it has just made me a better version of myself. I think I have more conversations with people about intent and consent and opening the door for someone else who doesn't look like you to have a valid point of view for being wrong. I love when I am wrong on this podcast, Joy, and you're like, yeah, that's not what happened. I'm like, yes, let's try this again. And I think we do a really good job with each other of sometimes we do finish each other's sentences. Sometimes you're like, what was that thing? And I'm like, oh, you're thinking of the pomegranate. And it's like, yes, I am. How did you know? Because I knew.
Yeah.
I knew where you were going. And you're like, what? And so that is for me a very fun part of our relationship. But I think what is even more interesting for me is that when we can take these experiences out into the wild, when we are not physically in the same place, and start conversations with strangers and have them go, oh, that's really interesting. Let me check that out. I think that for me is why I want to keep doing this. Let's be honest, Joey. It is not a cakewalk to present 100 episodes in the time frame that we have done. That has been a tremendous amount of work. And I think if I had known going in the commitment required to get us to this point, I might have been scared off. I'm glad that we have persevered because the juice is definitely worth the squeeze, as the kids say. It's definitely worth it. But that was a big surprise. So I want to make sure that I am able to share this with as many people as possible because why not? The world will be a better place when more people are reading great literature and showing empathy towards one another. That is the hill that I will die on. It's if you are feeling disconnected, that you don't belong here, pick up a book because everyone belongs in literature. No one doesn't.
Yeah, that's a good point. We literally talk about it all the time. Helping people gain empathy and gaining empathy for ourselves. I don't think I could ever stop wanting to seek out literature so that I could gain more empathetic than I feel like I already am. Because literature is the best thing for that, as you just explained. If you are unaware of the trials and tribulations of certain communities and you don't have anyone that you connected with to ask questions, there are other resources. Social media is a great resource and it's free. So as long as you have access to that, then that's a great resource. But written word and obviously short stories is a great resource for that. A slice of life, something you may never have had to experience in your life and feel some type of emotion, whatever the emotion the author is trying to evoke, whether it's happiness, sadness, whatever. So I think that's also why we do this. It motivates us because we want to do that. We already read diversely anyway. I don't want to read from all the same types of authors with all the same types of backgrounds because that's boring, obviously. That's also something that we're trying to highlight is when we are like, oh, you know what? We've never read anything from the Middle East. So then we were like, great.
We did two Iranian authors.
Yeah. So I think we're super open to being like, oh, hey, we never even talked about this part of the world before. We never even got this type of perspective yet. So that's really important. We can't grow as people if we're not trying to connect with works that are way outside of our realm. And in those episodes, you were talking about, parts of your upbringing being like, I didn't understand how this part of the world worked growing up because it was not part of my lived experience. I didn't have access to resources to give me the insight into that, so I had to take it on myself, which if you're an adult, you could do that. So that's great. And we all should be doing that. Speaking of that, is there a story or an author or even a region of the world that we have not gotten to this person or text or region I would really love to dive into?
Joey, to me, the world is open. All through the month of October, we've been reading horror. And so that was something that has really been fun. And as I was going through our spreadsheet of 99 episodes, I'm like, how many of these would classify as horror? And there was a lot. And there were also a lot of feminist writers. There were a lot of classics. One of the things that I would love to do more of that we did and then we never went back, flash fiction. I think there are probably some really fun flash fiction stories out there, micro stories for anyone who's curious what that means. They are a paragraph or two. They're very, very short. I'm sure there's some technical definition of how long it has to be with flash fiction, but for me, you'll know it when you see it, when it is like over in an instant.
1,500 words or less, it might be flash fiction.
That is something that I would like to do more of. Joy, one of the things that I was really excited about in what we've done so far, in the beginning, I think it was accidental. And as we progressed, it was definitely more intentional. We seemed to pick stories that thematically matched each other or echoed one another. And as you were talking about empathy and getting experiences outside of yourself, if you don't have friends that are of a community that is not similar to yours, who are you going to ask? Yes, you can get educated. Yes, you can go on social media, but can you experience that directly? I'm already getting a little choked up thinking about it. I was thinking about when we read Thank You, Ma'am, by Langston Hughes.
Oh yeah, that's a good story.
That was a lot. We also read his story, One Christmas Eve, which was also a punch in the gut, right? Like, I expected this nice, happy story. Yeah, you're not getting that from me right now. And in thinking about what the next 100 episodes might look like for us, I love the idea of getting into themes. We did Stream of Consciousness, we did our Summer of Madness, which I really enjoyed. I'd love to revisit the history of the Gothic tradition. I'd like to read Mary Shelley and Dracula and go back further in time. Brimming with ideas. The only limitation is how much time can we have for the episode. So that's the types of things that I'm looking forward to in the next segment of our life here together. The thematic groupings and being able to draw these threads through writers from different time periods and different perspectives. And for me, it feels like science. There has to be a grain of truth. If so many people are saying it from so many different directions, you keep landing on a message that's like, yes, that seems legit. I think I'm going to spend more time thinking about these ideas. How about you, Joey?
I have so many ideas. I want to read from the medieval era. I want to read from ancient Greece and ancient Rome. And I want to go even further back.
Joey, the Odyssey must happen in 2026. One of the things we can agree on.
I feel like that has to be multiple episodes of. How could you even do that in one episode? I mean, there's so many things.
When I say the Odyssey, I mean the Odyssey and all the adjacent text which have spawned off of that. And, you know, Circe will have to show up. It'll be great.
A lot of things have spawned from that, like most of literature. But if I had to pick something, I think exploring more of the Harlem Renaissance writers like Langston Hughes and Zora Neale Hurston, which we have not read from her yet here. We have both read her, obviously, in our own reading lives, but not together. And we have not discussed her. But obviously, one of her most well-known works, Their Eyes Were Watching God, an amazing novel. Hard to read because it's very emotional. I specifically remember being like, no, this cannot be how this happens.
And how much? Well, I'm going to need to open the second box of Kleenex because one box is just not enough.
It's a fantastic story and it's extremely well written. She has a lot of short stories too. One of her most well-known short stories is called Sweat. I would really like to do more of those authors. There's so many. I want to read all of these authors. I would really love to read Toni Morrison. Obviously, she was not part of the Harlem Renaissance. But I'm thinking of jazz because that was the era that takes place. And we both love Toni Morrison. She's like expert level, like, you know, God tier level author. Feels like we absolutely have to talk about her. There are so many. I could think of like a million authors. If I just look around at my books and be like, yeah, we gotta do that one. I would love to read like a full Faulkner. Again, it would be a challenge. The Sound and the Fury. We read that together in a book club outside of this. And that's an amazing one. So we could be a little pretentious and read Faulkner. There's so many. I have too long of a list.
For another project I'm working on, I just read William Faulkner's novella called The Bear. And we should definitely read that together. It's really, really good until the last 30 pages. It'll be great. And so, listeners, this is how Joey and I interact with each other every single day. It is a constant back and forth of, oh, and another thing. And then that reminds me of this. And have you read this? And have you done that? That is the excitement and energy we bring to each other. Hopefully it's not too annoying for other people because we do want this back and forth interaction. I would love to hear from people who listen to our podcast. Yes, we are doing this for our own enjoyment, for our own enrichment of the beauty of rolling around in language. We are going to do that until our eyes give out. I just don't see us saying, oh yeah, literature's not for me anymore. But I am curious, who are the people who are watching? What do they want? What are they reading? Can you turn us on to some new authors? Are there themes that we have just missed? We all have our reading blind spots. Maybe we are moving in a certain direction that people are like, oh, I would be really interested in hearing more about Shakespearean sonnets, or I want to know more about the Odyssey and how that has influenced other works throughout our entire civilization. We want to read more science fiction. Maybe we want to read a science text. Heaven forbid, Joey, we actually read a piece of nonfiction. That's a thing that could happen.
We've read nonfiction. We read Audre Lorde.
Okay, well, that was a smidge. So I'm going to say that was like the little tiniest smidge of our episodes. 2% of our episodes.
That's true, but we read that article about that guy Dan from Ohio.
We did read about Dan from Ohio, and we did read David Brooks. Thank you for reminding me of that, because you had asked me offline what would I like to do in 2026? What's next? And I was like, I would love to do more of those reaction videos. I would love to be very timely, read something in the New York Times or read something that someone else has posted on social media. Oh, I just had this interaction and this is what it meant to me. Well, let's sit with that and see, do we agree? Do we disagree? Were there valid points that we somehow missed? I really enjoyed that experience because, as always in our conversations, you just make me think deeper about what I think, if that makes sense. It's clarifying what I think and believe by hearing and reacting and pushing back or embracing what you're saying. That's a skill and a muscle I would like to continue to build up.
Yeah. And in terms of 2026, I really want to read something that is very popular, but I don't think we'll like. Because I'm just curious, like everyone is talking about this thing. Maybe it's like a romantasy, because that's not a genre that either of us read or would gravitate towards naturally. To challenge us, is there merit in this other than enjoyment? Obviously, you should read because you enjoy the act of reading and storytelling. Could there be excellent prose in there, or maybe just some sentences that are well written, or just trying to discover if we think that there's literary merit? We were not trying to discourage people from reading it, but how does this compare if we hold it up to someone like Virginia Woolf, who we are both fans of? I became a fan of in real time on this podcast.
Yes, you did. And that's a very high bar, Joey. So maybe I'd pick a mid-tier person. I can't tell you who that person is right now. I think where you were going is that we will never on this channel or in real life in a conversation with you shame a person for what they love to read. If your eyes are glancing across the page, you're doing it right. Well, how do you do this the right way? You sit with it, you feel something. If you're feeling pleasure, disgust, if it's erotic, whatever it is for you, that's all we're hoping for. That's really what we're looking at.
We have lots of options for an entire year of content.
Joey, I'm going to make a direct appeal. If there is someone out there listening to this and they have an idea for something that is very popular that you think either Joey or I or both of us will be like, oh, that's not for us. We wouldn't want to read that. Put it in the comments and we'll check it out. I'm not saying guaranteed we're going to read it, but I'm always open for book suggestions from other people because it also helps me get to know authors that I just haven't experienced. I tell people I'm a professional podcaster. This is what I am doing with my life right now. I am not doing a ton of reading outside of our podcast channel because there just is only so many time in the day. So I am deputizing all my friends, everyone I know. If you read something great, let me know because that would be something we could talk about.
Yeah, I spend a lot of time reading. I read a lot of stuff outside of our podcast. Just 'cause
You are an inspiration to me, Joey. I'm never going to get there. I shouldn't say I'm not going to get there. As my life is currently unfolding, I'm not going to get there. It is a goal of mine to be able to read for pleasure, just anything that I choose to do on my own. I am in a couple other book clubs. So when I say that I don't read for my own pleasure, I am reading and having conversations with others. I'm constantly reading, but it's not something that I would just pluck off the shelf and go, yeah, this is mine for no reason. I'm just reading it because.
Yeah, I like just pleasure reading. And I don't have to analyze it. That's the part that burns me out. I was doing so many book clubs, like 6 or 7 a week, when I was like, this is too much. Why am I doing that? Why am I doing so many? I was having a good time. I was meeting a lot of people. Anyway, that's a different story. I really like pleasure reading. I don't want to analyze stuff all the time. I mean, I do naturally when I'm reading on my own. But sometimes I'm reading things like the Dungeon Crawler Carl series, which I talk about a lot in and out of here. Because it's fantastic and it's so much fun. But, I don't have to analyze that. I have to think about what's going to happen next. But I don't have to critique it. It's just a joyride, and that's okay.
Awesome. That sounds great, Joey. Probably not for me, but I get it. I completely get it.
We've hit 100 episodes. It's been a wild ride, and I'm excited to see what our next 100 episodes brings. Who knows? Maybe we'll be getting sponsored by then. You never know.
You never know. Stranger things have happened. Okay, Joey, here's to whatever comes next. And I'll see you next week.
See ya.
See ya.